Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice is the one and only Dan Bastick. Now, Matt and I were just talking, and he was like, you need to intro him as Mr. Dan Bombastic. And I was like, I can't do that. But I'm sure you'll get it because we've got a similar sense of humour.
He's correct. He's very correct. I nearly, you know what, last year when I was doing a music choreography with Alex, my videographer, 𝗂𝗵𝗆, shout out, I nearly had him do, it was cutting the music up and it was going to break to Mr. Bombastic as a joke, but I wasn't confident in my look. So I was like, I can't pull that off.
I love that. That's even better. Now, today we're going to be talking about essentially how far competitors are willing to go. We've both done multiple preps and we work with clients that prep themselves, and there's different levels to bodybuilding. It's certainly been a common thing that's come up recently on the podcast where it's almost like there's a divide between amateur. So UK obviously there's lots of federations for the amateur division, and then you've got like jump forward to IFBB and PCA to a certain degree as well. And then there doesn't seem to be this sort of middle ground anymore. And I think that a lot of the time with social media, etc., that you can start bodybuilding because it's pretty accessible, but you don't really realize maybe how far the top athletes are going and what they're doing and how extreme it gets. I'm sure you'll agree.
Absolutely. So you tell me, when you got started in this and you start finding out certain things, you'd said to yourself, oh yeah, but I'll never do that. But then you do it. And then the next thing is, I'll never do that. So my example was, for me, I'd never use insulin. I said that when I was young, but then you progress through and you start learning more, and then you become more experimental the deeper you get into it. It really is true in terms of bodybuilding. I think every drug is a gateway drug to the next thing. My current thing at the minute, I said, after listening to a podcast on DMP, I said, I never use DMP. I don't see the risk to reward ratio. And I hope I stand by that. At this point, I'd say I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want it to get to that point. I don't like the variable, but who knows? This is bodybuilding. Competitive nature, athlete mentality dictates that at the end of the day, when you've got a job to do, how our minds kind of work. And I can't speak for everyone, but people that I'm associated with, perhaps yourself, myself, you end up doing whatever's necessary to achieve the goal. It's quite crazy the way the mind works, where in a certain setting you will say you'll never do it, but when you're in that process and the wheels are turning, you will often go there.
Yeah, because I was exactly the same with insulin. I never thought, particularly as a female, I just didn't think it would really be something that I'd consider per se. And when I came off the back of my last prep, doing that assisted, and then my food went up pretty high for a female, I believe, you know, in the bikini realms. So carbs got up to 500, and my coach Tom was like, well, this is where we could deploy insulin. And I was like, what? Insulin for a bikini girl? And then the more you delve into it, it's like there is other bikini girls using it, and it's wild because, like yourself, I never thought it would even really be on the cards.
Yeah, it depends on the setting, doesn't it, and how it's presented to you on a plate. I mean, with insulin, you can be, it's often how competitors rationalize it in their own brain to do these things. And in that moment, I would guess that carbohydrates are sky high, and you're thinking of insulin as more of a prophylactic aid to aid pancreas in doing its normal job. But in doing that, we totally disregard what could be on the other end of it. You know, that dependency, that the pancreas starts to sit back, the HbA1c levels come up and up, rising over the years. Especially things like when you're doing that, you're probably using growth hormone at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Then it's a cluster, but we're still kind of thinking, oh, but it can be a health aid, which it can be. But I think with anything there, it's devil is in the dosage.
Yeah, for sure. And we're talking about assisted realms, natty realms as well. You know, for me, competing naturally for many, many years, I dug myself into a hole because I was doing back-to-back prep. So even on the natural side, you know, people assume that it's just when you're assisted that you're, you know, risking things, but it's not, because when you're doing it natty, you know, hormonally, if you keep doing it, there is repercussions, and it's super important to get that awareness up. And people sometimes sort of skirt around it, if you know what I mean. Oh, well, you know, I've got to get to stage, doesn't matter till off the back of it. But I know myself, you know, 12 years of competing, got a lot of health issues that I'm addressing now, and it's a bit of pill to swallow. I wouldn't change it because I got a lot from it, but it's like, fuck, you know, I'm 34.
Yeah, this is a controversial opinion of mine, but I say bodybuilding, however you do it, it's not natural. Not in the way what we take, but in the way the ramifications can be on the body. With natural competing, you know, with taking PEDs alone as a female, you can force yourself into early menopause. You can become postmenopausal in all sorts of ways, but you can do it for natural bodybuilding as well in so many ways as well. Like, for example, I had, this is going on the male side of things, I had a client, Aaron, classic physique, fantastic physique. Through prep this year, at the end of prep, his testosterone was, I think it was 0.1 nanomole per deciliter at the end of prep. Yeah. That is absolute, that wouldn't even, I believe that wouldn't even be in reference range for a female, or it would be low end, very low end.
Yeah.
Which, you know, with that, you're looking at knock-on effect, because when imbalances arise, the body is trying to reach homeostatic status, everything else is out of whack as well. So through that, you know, he's 20, I think he's 24 or 25, Aaron. So what are you then having to lead yourself to? It's, oh, well, I'm going to have to go to TRT now. I'm sure he won't mind me talking about this because he's very open with his now switched to enhanced, which he's gone to TRT, which now when he competes, is he going to compete at TRT in an enhanced field? Probably not. It's dosaging up from there. And now he's led himself into a gateway, which I was accepting of, because he has goals. And as coaches, all we can hope is that we do them and we guide these people as safe as possible, and they're not going off some of the advice in the internet and just going off their own back and making mistakes, because we don't like to see people make mistakes. But at the same time, it's via the competitive route that has led to this in the first place. So I think whether you're enhanced or natural, competitive bodybuilding, it's not going to be healthier doing it over and over again for years.
Yeah. And for sure, I certainly, when I speak to people, you know, on a consult or however it goes, when people talk about the prep, for me, because I guess there is that personal side to it where I'm like, you know, I've got a lot of things I'm addressing now, not only health wise, but relationship with food, body image, etc., which I'm working hard on and digging down on. And if someone comes to me saying, you know, I'd love to do what you do, it's a really serious conversation. And I think sometimes it could be taken in the wrong way, right? Like, you know, why are you warning me of all these things that can occur? But like you said exactly there, as coaches, we can only try and, you know, give as much information as possible if someone is going down this route. Now, bodybuilding can bring so many positives, but it does, particularly, you know, if you're going into a category where you've got to get skinned, it's not healthy. And when you're in it, you don't really realize it's like, you know, I'm getting all the striations are coming, you're doing something so incredible and you get hooked.
Yeah, that is generally the consensus amongst like people in our industry. A lot of us, some of us not come from an athletic background or competitive background in some shape, way, or form. So we are driven to win. It's human nature, isn't it? Is whether you're female or male, if you're of competitive nature, it's about that kind of, I'm going to say it's kind of hierarchy in a way. It's an alpha, you know, to be the best. Whether you're female or male, it's totally there. But there are some competitors, you know, who purposely will not push the boundaries and do come in softer and are able to accept it. I've seen it. A guy called 𝗗𝗲, who's classic physique. I know he purposely not pushed drugs. He won't push the diet. He won't sacrifice social life, stuff like that, which, you know, as long as he's not complaining about the result, have at it, he's happy, which is a total, I'd never heard of that before. Somebody who purposely won't come in shape because they are not willing to do the actions that require it. Usually if someone doesn't come in shape, they regret it. This person hasn't, so there are outliers there as well.
Yeah, there's certainly different ends of the spectrum with exactly what you just said there. I think that, you know, again, when we talk about amateur into professional divisions, you know, some of the categories are rewarding a softer look, and particularly bikini, you know, it's slightly different now in the amateur feds, not PCA, I'd say, but then you've got two bros and you've got to come in pretty lean for bikini. There's a big divide there. And people say sacrifice, but I'm sure you're the same. I never see it as a sacrifice, because this is a choice for me. And it's like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And that's always been my ethos. But
yeah, there are caveats to that, which we'll get to regards drug usage and mental health and stuff like that.
yeah.
But it's very much, if you're in this, it's being in this for the right reasons, which I think when people are not in this for the right reasons, that is what can lead to a lot of mental health issues in themselves, because they don't feel accepted. They're not, you know, they are not in themselves. They might really struggle with the process. And in being so, they think there is a problem with themselves because they're not. But maybe the problem is this sport is just not for you.
Yeah, it's savage. It's pretty savage.
It really is. It really is.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. What I was going to ask is what were we talking about? We were talking about federations, softer looks and stuff like that. Now, criteria is so subjective across all categories. Whether we're talking, you know, you look at PCA bikini versus two bros bikini. I mean, it's actually a little bit more similar compared to others, in my opinion. But then you look at PCA figure, and I know you've got different deviations of figure within PCA. You look at two bros figure, and then the upper echelon of figure is, you know, they would do kind of WPD posing in some, but with heels on. Then you look at WPD on the two bro side of things, NPC, and it's totally different. What's your opinion of rewarding softer look than what is desired at pro level? Because we see it, people can't turn pro like men's physique because, sorry, you have too much muscle. But when they do turn pro, they need more muscle.
Yeah.
What's your opinion in that? Because it will lead to a little caveat as well.
I love that you've asked that. No one's ever asked me that, and Matt and I talk about it a lot. For me, especially my last prep, I mean, saying that, my first prep, I got so lean, but I had no muscle because I came from a non-sporting background. So I've always had the ability to get lean. And in this last prep, like, it fucking hell, you know, we'll probably talk about it over the episode, but it was savage. And for me, I want to be awarded for getting absolutely shredded, but my physique is suited to bikini, and it wasn't awarded. You know, I didn't win any of my shows last season, and I actually went in and I got to a point in prep where I said to my coach, let's just go on some crazy personal exploration where I just get as shredded as I can. I don't know if I'll go back to this place again. I'm already so close to being like peeled out my mind, and it was fucking sick. And I was in the hole. So it was like that switch of the flip of the switch. And then I stood on stage and I felt like I'd won because I'd done something I'd never done myself. You know, I still think I don't know how I did that. So for me, in my personal mind, it's like, I love seeing people skinned. However, when we look at it from a health standpoint and the sport being so much more accessible, particularly in the amateur realms, it's of course better for the athletes if they are coming in softer because they're not having to go so extreme. So yeah.
It definitely depends on the category for sure as well, because generally, speaking from like men's bodybuilding, it's softer, more shredded. It depends on the amount of muscle mass you hold. It depends on whether you going that extra 10 pounds down actually takes away from the silhouette of your physique and actually makes your physique less in line with the criteria. I don't know if that is the same for, you know, a bikini figure. I would guess figure, they'll require a little bit more bubbliness across the legs. So if you do come in too peeled, because there is a subtle, I'm talking from IFBB standpoint here. There is a subtle conditioning there that comes through the quads. The glutes aren't fully straighted, but they're very hard. It's almost like the person has dieted to shredded, but they feel back out.
Yeah. And that actually I found in this last prep, I looked better about 8 weeks post show when I'd had food and I'd had some recovery, etc. And it was like I could step on stage now and probably do really well, but I was hanging out my arse. I'm not scared to admit it. I was fucked, like really fucked. And it took me, and this is where the sort of health concerns come in. It genuinely took me, I feel, 8 to 10 months till I went, I feel okay now, like actually okay. You know, you get those points, don't you, where you're like, feel a bit better, feel a bit better.
Yeah. Same thing's happening with Romana right now. Same thing.
Easy.
She had a long prep, and even, you know, towards the second prep, her body was non-responsive in every way, shape, or form. And she's saying she's fed up of feeling like this, but it's trying to rationalize in, look at what you've just done, what you've achieved. I'd say it's worth it for sure, but you have to pay your body back. It's borrowing money from the bank essentially, and you've borrowed a lot to do that.
Yeah, and you feel, because Romana mentioned it on our pod, why can't I go and train like the other IFBB pros are off the back of doing the same show and things like this? But really relevant point you say there. Now, if you're doing multiple shows and you qualify for something that's later in the season, and you might hang out at maintenance for a short space of time, but that's not going to do fuck all. And then you go back into the rest of your prep for the, you know, later in the year or what have you. But I guess Romana's similar to me. If I get an invite to the finals or something else, it's like, I can't let that go. But the unresponsive body, that would be an interesting topic for us to delve into for sure.
Yeah, this is, I guess, in line with what will you do as an athlete to get the job done. Is you've had a good prep, you've qualified for the Olympia or the finals or whatever, the early stage, you know, season A, and then season B, you're back in prep again. You're mentally fatigued, you're tired, your body's beat up, joints are hurting. You on top, Mana had a few things on top as well, which I'm probably sure she spoke about. But I don't want to just use her as an example. I just want to kind of generalize it a little bit. And then you're already going into all the process you went in before, but almost with an arm behind your back, and doing so and putting all this effort in, and your body is not responding like it usually would. That in itself is a mental game of trying to it's just trying to tick boxes and essentially trying to survive. It's a mental game of staying in prep and not throwing in the towel. There was a point at 5 weeks out, going back to Romana. I said I was going to generalize it, but I can't really because it's so recent. There was a point at 5 weeks out which I thought she was going to throw in the towel. I said to her, look, I think I know what's going on here. Give me till Friday. We had a week, and I'm sure I know what to do here. And to be honest, I was only about 80% sure I knew what it was, going by what I could see in my eyes. And luckily I was right. But if that didn't go right that week, she would have pulled out that prep for sure. Well, I say this from perspective, I would have pulled out this prep. Whether Mana would have pulled out this prep, I don't know. She is the most stubborn person I've ever met. I've never, absolute fucking animal. I've never had a client who was going through all that and doing what she was doing and still go and do it. It was a real struggle. I'd never heard her complain about prep before, but she was. And she was saying she feels like a pussy for complaining. Not about the process as such, but what her body was doing. I was trying to convince her, look, this isn't what you're going through, is far more than what any other competitor would usually, in a perfect scenario, actually go through. You've got a really bad hand here. You complaining, it's not complaining, it's rationalizing, talking to me what's going on with your body right now. It's not complaining. But athlete mentality is, they always think it's something up with their own mental game.
Yeah.
Because we're so, I think if you've been doing this long enough, you're a competitor, you become so self-analytical, you become so you think about your actions, you think about how you reacted in certain situations, you almost paint a picture, step out and have a look. I think in herself, and what a lot of other competitors do, we do analyze our own mental game, whether we're strong enough. We have self-doubt in that way. This is where prep, I feel like, can be such a good thing for so many people, in that to overcome it, that is so powerful. Like, I remember I had a really hard prep when I was a junior for the British PCA in 2019. Yeah, I am that young. I had a really hard prep. Yeah, I got skinless, and the efforts paid off, but I had a few things going on that I wasn't sure, because there was a few health things I didn't know about at the time, and at the time I thought it might have been quite serious. But as an athlete mentality, you just plow on. I didn't tell my coach what was going on at all. I went on. But when you're trying to do this process, and perhaps maybe your body's not responding how you would, but you're putting all this effort in, that's a mental, takes a lot of fortitude to overcome. In my scenario, a few people would remember this. From about 5 weeks out, it started off, both my eyes went bloodshot. They were fully filled in with blood. I hardly had any white to my eyes. And then about 3 weeks out, both my eyes were black and blue. It looked like I'd been in a fight. Then it went over to my nose, and then my whole cross was red and black and blue. Now, at this time, I wasn't as knowledgeable, but my thought at the time was perhaps my kidneys were not in a good way, or something wasn't right, whether it's liver, kidneys. But at the same time, I ignored it. I put it on the back burner. I would like, when I checked in with Jordan, I would have my beanie so low you couldn't see the tops of my eyes. You just thought it was bags under my eyes, and the camera's far away enough you couldn't see the red in my eyes. But that's an example of, was that smart not to tell my coach what was going on all through? I just want to fucking get this done. Athlete mentality, I'm going forward, I'm going straight through. I'll deal with it after. That kind of mentality.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I would have told my coach, and he would have probably put my thoughts at ease and told me what was going on, because I know now what was going on. I trained, and I burst a couple of blood vessels through being low caloric intake, high cardio, sleeping 3 hours a night, 2 hours a night if I was lucky, sleep deprivation, recovery capabilities are down in the floor. When that happened, it was a trickle effect that it then leaked over the eyeball and then just filtrated across. And through recovery capabilities not being there, I don't know if you ever know, so you get a spot in prep or like a scar, how much longer does that take to heal?
Well, you know, some of the things that you do in a prep, though, like you're referencing there, when you look back, you're like, there's something wrong with me. You know, I sometimes have podcast guests that haven't done a prep, but they either work with lifestyle clients or whatever. Maybe they prep people, but they haven't prepped themselves. And they're like, you lot are absolute lunatics. But we think that it's normal as well, because on social media, we follow bodybuilders. We go to shows. Our friends are bodybuilders. And then if we were to describe this to a normal person, like your parent or something, they'd be like, what is wrong with you? But to us, it's completely normal, isn't it? Like you say, with the athlete mentality.
I was doing this prep. I'd just done my master's dissertation at like 8 weeks out. And then I moved back home after university. And I was being around my parents, but my mum, I'm super, super close with. So she was seeing a lot of what was going on. And from the outside looking in, you know, nobody wants to see their child face sucked in, looking like a crackhead, eyes bloodshot all over. It's not a nice sight for them to see. That's my only experience of thinking, what would a normal person think of that process, that scenario? I don't know. Something I've always questioned myself. I don't know if other people are just different mentally, or does bodybuilding make you this way? Is it environment, or is it DNA?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know. What makes us as people get into this sport in the first place, then put our bodies through this? I mean, a lot of people have harsh backgrounds in which they see, they might not know it at the time, but they know they've got to train themselves up, and it's almost like a suit of armor
For sure.
to protect themselves. Without me even knowing it, that was actually what I did. I didn't know until only actually a few weeks ago. I didn't know a few things happened, but subconsciously that's what happened. But it's an interesting thought. Like, do you think somebody who perhaps hasn't got that within them from an early age, can environment foster this do whatever it takes mentality and actually be like that with conviction, if that makes sense? There's a difference of being like that and totally being 100% in belief that this is the right thing to do and having no doubts about it.
Yeah, because I think there's certainly almost two ways to look at it from my experience with, you know, talking with other competitors, etc. I feel like if someone's from a sporting background and they're used to discipline from a young age, they're used to what it takes to compete. So whether there's a lot of people that are like swimmers, gymnastics, that type of thing, and a lot of those are quite harsh sports, particularly as a young age. But then many competitors do have trauma in their background, and I feel like, certainly for me, when I've never had a sporting background and never ever been good, like excelled at anything, I've always been good. So, you know, I could do maths, English, science, whatever to a good level, but I never had the opportunity in life to excel. I found bodybuilding and I thought, this is a direct return from my own hard work. So I don't need to, you know, obviously you need to learn to pose, etc., but you don't need to have prerequisites per se. Obviously, if you're pursuing it, ideally you've got genetics behind you as well. But it was like, it unearthed, I don't really know where it came from, apart from never felt control in my life. Suddenly I did. But it's a slippery path, because then when, now off the back of that and looking back and dealing with the past trauma, it's like, whoa, you've got to dig deep. And that is very tough.
So looking at, like, trying to differentiate between differences and commonalities, you didn't come from a sporting background yourself. Yeah. I did. So there's two different routes that still led to bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But you dealt with some, by the way you talk about it, some trauma, which felt you wanted to have complete control over everything. Yeah. Now, trauma, it's, you know, trauma, the deviations are, they're different. Trauma and PTSD are two different things, but can have quite similar ways in which you react to them. I feel like the gaining control thing is a really natural attribute for a bodybuilder themselves. I think that's what I went through a couple of months there. I didn't feel myself at all. I wouldn't say I had depression or anything like that. I think that's also a term that often gets thrown around too much and not really thought into what it really entails. But I wasn't myself. I wasn't too happy. And the reason why was because I didn't really get a rebound off the back of my show. I was too busy with work. I was traveling from, well, we did a lot of different countries. We did show after show, weekend after weekend. There really wasn't a weekend where I didn't have a client competing. I was never in one spot to dedicate into my off season. And then towards the last kind of 2 months, my appetite went. Therefore, I didn't feel like a bodybuilder, which to me is control. I didn't have control over what I was doing for myself. And in doing this, actually, in my opinion, I don't think I was as good as a coach as I could have been. Yeah. Having control over myself and controlling my own shit, it brings me calm and it makes me a better person.
Me too.
You know?
I totally resonate.
Yeah, it's interesting though, coming from different backgrounds. So it's not exactly having a competitive background that makes the bodybuilder. It's often that there's something intrinsic in you that requires control. So from your background, where you didn't have a sporting background, why didn't you take up sport earlier, do you think, knowing that control is something that you required?
I think that, so my mum, she did her best. She was a single mum. So she sort of, you know, dropped us at school. And not that she didn't invest time in our education, but it wasn't like, you know, some parents will say, why don't you try this sport, or why don't you try this, or whatever. So we went through school, my brother and I, and, you know, like I say, I did good at everything, and I didn't really have an inclination to do sport. But then the sort of trauma for myself started. My dad left when I was 5, and then from sort of 8, things were uncovered, and various other things. Then after school, I ended up, you know, in a really bad circle of people, into alcohol, drugs, etc. Then, you know, it was just getting through life. So it's almost like, I guess, because it wasn't suggested to me to pursue a sport, I maybe didn't feel on reflection that I'd be good enough to do it. So I'd pull away. And then when, you know, I had so much going, it was like a domino effect. I was in this like victim mindset of, well, I'm never going to be good enough. And that was with partners and everything else. And then the bodybuilding was the only thing, when I found it, that I was like, wow, you know, it saved my life. And for ages, I, you know, coined that phrase as to what bodybuilding brought me. And yeah, I probably just didn't feel, you know, like the girls that go, I'm on my period, I can't do sport today at school. I was one of those.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. So you have, from your childhood, you have things that are building on top of things, and it starts spiraling. When it starts spiraling, you're not in control. You have, I guess, you're in a loop, and it's hard when it's going like this to get out. And that bodybuilding, the association with what it takes to progress in this, is the thing that started dropping out habits from what you were doing.
It's
very,
you can, it's really easy, isn't it, when you're a bodybuilder? Well, I mean, I say that at the start it can be a bit tricky with conflict and external pressure, but you can go, I don't drink alcohol, I'm a bodybuilder. Oh, I can't really have that meal because I'm in prep. So you easily, like, I institutionalized myself. So it was like, I've only got to think about myself. I've only got to control what I do. I just listen to my coach, fuck anyone else. And then I turned into this like absolute bot.
Does that, I mean, what does I have this even with my mum, when she's complaining about somebody that's no longer a friend of hers anymore, because they might be a toxic person, something like that. When you get into this and you dedicate yourself to every kind of level of it, and then you start saying literally what you said, fuck everyone else, and you become a selfish person. People say selfish, but I tell you what, it teaches you a lot to do with surrounding yourself with the right people, and people only bring good to your life. This is something that talking to normal people like my mum, who's not sport orientated or anything like that, trying to let them know that, you know, you do actually have control over who you interact with, who's in your environment. I always say you're a combination of the 5 or 6 people that you're always around in some way, shape, or form. So what do you want that combination to look like?
Yeah. And like you said there with your mum, my mum came on the pod. It, like, we spoke about so many different things, of basically her watching me prep multiple times. And she got to age 60, and for the first time in her life, I persuaded her to do it. Similar scenario to your mum, where someone owed her money and they were just taking the piss. You know, they buy coffees in front of her and not mention it. I said, Mum, look, you need to sort this out. It's someone you work with, meant to be a friend. She messaged her, can I have the money? And the girl messaged back, yep, and gave her the money. And my mum was so empowered. So on the podcast, I said, what would happen if someone took the piss out of you now? She said, cut them off. But she got to age 60 before she was able to do that, right?
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like that right there is like a little social experiment.
Yeah, for sure. I was like, oh.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, when, like in that scenario, you see somebody who goes through something a little bit small like that, but takes control of it, and it opens their eyes into, you do have control over your life. And I think bodybuilding is very much a endeavor of having complete control over your mind and body. very much so. In the depths of prep, in off season, when you're forcing food, it's having complete control. So even, you know, time after time, I guess you would deal with it probably more than me. A lot of females, less males, just because I've got male clients, I've had male lifestyle clients specifically, but dealing with food issues, relationship, and they get shredded for a prep because it's something that comes natural to them to want to starve almost. Like you said yourself, you had food relationship issues. It really appealed to you. How shredded can I get? But on the other flip of off season, when it comes to eating food and gaining body fat, that is a real battle, I guess, to somebody who goes through this, trying to convince them that this is for the betterment of your next look on stage. This is a test of what bodybuilding, in terms of controlling what can be controlled. You can control your mind, and that's a real battle for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure, because it does, I guess, like you say there, with females, it's probably more relevant in regards to when we're more predisposed to having fat, you know, childbearing, etc. So
I was about to say, a lot of that's social conditioning as well, because there's a massive pressure on females to be a certain look and a certain size. I feel like men have that to an extent with masculinity, but no way near the same kind of level in terms of it's okay for a guy to have a dad bod and it's worshipped. It's worshipped a little bit, you know, it's glorified, which, you know, but it's definitely harder for females, I feel. Like even Romana, when we first got together, progress that she's made, it's giving her an environment in which she feels safe and valued, and as well for a female to feel sexy, even when they are pushing food, pushing body fat, etc., and feel like, oh wait, they don't actually see me as disgusting. This is accepted. Being able to do that for somebody is a real game changer.
Yeah, it's massive. Like this came up on a pod the other day, actually, and we were talking about, you know, it's essentially people that want to stay lean all year round and the effects of that mentally and physically. But we were saying, you know, for Matt, when I was really lean, you know, he was scared that he's going to break. Like he'd hug me and he's sort of like, you know, and it, when we talk about it, we're open and honest, you know, we just communicate about everything. He's like, you know, I'm not looking at you thinking, God, you look really sexy per se. But in my mind, I'm like, well, everyone wants me to be absolutely shredded because that's what I like. But actually, you know, either end of the spectrum is skewed how you feel about yourself for sure in a lot of competitors. Not everyone, but, you know, each end of off season or prep.
Yeah, it's for me, what's helped me and help Romana as well is disassociation with the body in a way that whilst you're bodybuilding, it kind of isn't your body. It's dictated by the stage and what you can bring to stage. When you're shredded, the goal is to get shredded. When you're in off season, goal is to gain muscle tissue, and which is going to be a totally different look on the end of the scale, end of the spectrum. What is your job is to control what you control and make sure you're picky with your people in terms of, if you're in a relationship, make sure that person supports you, make sure that person is still desiring you for you being you. It's not about your body. That's the disassociation with stage. Like for me and Romana, I didn't think to her, oh, she's so attractive because she's a competitor. It's about who she is. It's more than that. Yeah, of course, I think she's attractive in terms of how she looks, whether she's shredded or off season.
She looks sick.
Full beatus mode. Either way, I think she's sexy as hell. But it's about person. And I think we all have this same kind of maybe diluted view of our partner, because other people might not see it the same way. But what's important is that you see it that way. It's because you have this goal, you have this vision of one person, and that's that same person, whether shape, size they are.
Yeah, and it's certainly something, you know, there are people that listen to the podcast, of course, that it's something I explore quite a lot with, they're not with a bodybuilder. And I know myself, it did not work out for me in my previous relationship. It was very, very hard. We were, you know, completely different interests, etc. And over time that caused cause resentment, etc., etc. And there's going to be people listening that potentially, you know, there's so many tangents this can go on with relationships, but when you go into a bodybuilding prep, and if you're with someone that maybe doesn't get it, you know, it's new to you as well, maybe you're a first timer, and they get to a point in prep and they think this person's not the right person for me, I want to pursue bodybuilding. Do you come across this?
I was going to say the only caveat to this is in terms of how you view a person and who they are and whatever body they wear.
Yeah.
For me, because I've been in relationships where I've been with non-competitors and non-bodybuilders don't even train.
Yeah.
What matters to me is that they are passionate about something. They're goal driven. They have their own passion. I'm the type of partner, if they are passionate about bloody art or sprinting or playing the flute, I want to see that person devote so much to that endeavor, because I want to be so proud of them when they're able to do something serious.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's a massive attraction for me as somebody that is goal driven, that whatever they're doing, they have that drive. They have a reason to wake up out of bed in the morning and go get on and do that and chase that. So I think previously in relationships, what's happened is probably the person, I've always been a bodybuilder. I've never strayed from that since being in relationships anyway. But the person might start out interested in bodybuilding, go to the gym, but then they stop the gym, which isn't a problem, not a problem at all. But they don't replace it with anything, and they just start wallowing and just existing, and they wonder, they're waiting for your time, because you're so driven on something and you've got boxes to tick, you've got meals to eat. They're almost just living their life waiting for you to finish work or finish the gym and everything like that. It's like, why are you not getting on and doing something and chasing something and making something of your life? To me, it's a very unattractive quality, and it creates neediness, in my opinion. It creates a sense of jealousy as well. Without that person admitting it, that person starts resenting what you do. Oh, do you have to go to the gym again? Oh, you're eating again. Like, even in off season when you're pushing calories, we're just about to go to bed, you're just eating, you're eating more. You're 290 pounds. Like, this isn't right. But they don't see it for, I'm doing this for a purpose.
Yeah. And I also think that a lot of people that are in these type of relationships, it can often be that because it's called off season, people outside of competing think that you just do the prep and then the off season, it's like, oh, cool, so we can go back to normal life now. And it's like,
you're off diet now, aren't you? You're done.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's quite hard to communicate it initially, I found myself, when there was, you know, my normal friends around me, and everyone was like, what the bloody hell is this? You know, what am I doing? I'm from a small town. No one really did bodybuilding and what have you. And I found over the years, it got easier to just go, look, let me do what I'm doing. Yes, I am eating again. Yes, I'm eating fish and veg. You eat what you're eating, but it took a while. What would your advice be to people maybe listening that come across this sort of external pressure, if they are, you know, really into the bodybuilding, and like what we're talking about, they're putting everything into it, and they're, you know, dealing with external pressure from friends or work colleagues, etc., etc.?
So my perspective comes from someone who's always bodybuilding, and what we've discussed previously, we'll control what we can control, and we have control over our life, over the people we interact. If there is somebody in your life that is making your life harder and you're not as happy because of that, because if I'm not structured, I'm not happy. It's harsh, but it's drop that person out of your life. And yeah, it might be hard, but you have to take care of yourself. It's not your problem that person has nothing going for them, you know. It's brutal, but trust me, in the long term, you'll realize that there are people out there that will support your goals, even if they don't bodybuild, who will understand. And to me, it's a symptom of actually not loving the person. Love the idea of the person. Because when somebody gets with a bodybuilder, or like previously me when I'm a bodybuilder, they see it as, oh, my boyfriend's a bodybuilder, so attractive and all this muscular. 2 years down the line, it wears thin because they realize, wait, you're still like this, doing it this way. It's like, well, yeah, how do you expect that I look like this anyway? It doesn't just happen, which is a silly question because they complain about every part of the process which you have to do to be like that.
Yeah,
it's about being in love with the idea rather than actually me. This is something that Romana is the first person that's fully accepted me, whether I was a bodybuilder or not. If I was passionate, she's saying she needs to be with someone that's passionate about something, I think she'd still be with me.
Yeah.
Well, she would now because we're together, but I mean, in the first place of getting together, because it doesn't matter whether I'm 2 days out from a show or I'm 290 pounds hooked up to a CPAP. The way she is with me is no different. No different.
I love that you said that.
That's a symptom of not being in love what she sees with her eyes, the physical. It's loving the person.
Yeah, because actually, you know, like you say about sleep apnea, and there's certain things we make adaptations for when we're, you know, whether we're in off season or prep, you know, you do things and don't really realize. So, you know, when my clem was high, as an example, before we jumped on, you said your clem, and we'll prop you up for the episode. But, you know, like sometimes I'm like, either blah, 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 or I can't get a sentence out, or like all these wild things, you know. Every night still now, Matt tucks a pillow under my calves at night so that they're raised, because I get swelling and I'm prone to swelling from, you know, extreme dieting for so many years, etc. There's little things like that, sleep apnea, all of those things that, you know, these are the extremes of the sport that people don't see on Instagram. They're like, this is sick. Oh no, wait, we've got a sleep apnea mask, we've got XYZ.
People don't see, you know, my Instagram. I'm not the best with Instagram, as we know. I'm not. I'm one of these person goes like, oh, that's cool, I'll post it. I'm not a scroller. I don't scroll really. If I'm on Instagram, it's because I'm posting something because I thought it's pretty cool.
Love that.
But I mean, what this is really interesting when you're talking about the extremes of the sport is you're in a relationship and it's not in line with your goals. And like my athlete mentality is now, especially after my last relationship, drop it. It opened that last relationship that I had to drop, opened the gateway for me to be even more brutal and see clearly.
Yes.
How far, again, going to the title, how far will you go as an athlete or a bodybuilder to achieve your goals? And it really does come into your personal and your social life as well.
Yeah, for sure, because you can push people away very easily. And you're going to be on the trend episode, of course, that, you know, certain PEDs can bring about different behaviors. Particularly trend, I would say, is one of the hot ones that people start to push people away.
This is one of my things with trend is the only 19 nor I can use and function like happy person. So yeah, this is one of the things. So trend is one of these things that I don't take dosing high. We'll get onto this, but my moods don't vary on whatever I'm taking, as long as I'm not taking MPP, because I don't feel myself an MPP.
Is that the one that Romana said that she didn't know you were on? And then
no, the other one that's definitely changed me, makes me a more colder person, is halo testing. Yeah, that'll be those two definitely do change me. Otherwise, mentally, I don't change really at all, which I don't know if I believe in people really changing in responses to drugs. There are certain drugs I think must, but in terms of somebody just being on more testosterone or more primobolan, drugs that really shouldn't neurally impact the mental health and stuff like that, I think in that scenario, there is something in that person it just makes them more of.
Yeah, for sure. There's certainly an undercurrent with a lot more. The more I talk about PED use, the more that comes about.
Maybe halo testing doesn't actually change me. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe maybe it's just making me more of what's deep down there. Now, what Halo and no steroid makes me aggressive at all.
Yeah. You don't very aggressive.
I train too hard in the gym to have any kind of aggression. I'm listening to reggae in the car all day, right? There's just nothing there, because if I didn't train, I don't know, we'd find out. But I don't have that in me really, as far as whilst I'm bodybuilding. But maybe as a child, I was very introverted, very quiet.
Yeah.
What halo testing does, it makes me quiet and puts myself in a corner.
Okay, yeah, so that would potentially make sense, wouldn't it?
So maybe it does make me more of what I really am. And again, prep at the end of prep, 2 weeks out, I do like halo testing. And do I still take it even though it makes me like that? Yes, but I'm also going to learn that I need to tell Mana 2 weeks out, this is going in now. Just check myself every now and then if I'm getting a little bit distant.
Yeah, because that's going to cause that, you know, over time it could cause resentment, etc. But also the partner, again, if it's not a bodybuilder, you know, Romana gets it, which is super cool. Matt gets, you know, he understands me. Sometimes it's very, very hard for him. Like, he can feel very emotional about what I'm willing to do. Like, you know, seeing me prep, he's never been with a bodybuilder before, and he was just like, this is next level. You know, you're like not lean, and I had striations through my actual facial cheeks when I was eating, and he was like, what the hell? And I'm like, no, I'm not that lean. I need to keep going. And it's like, you know, from his point of view. But that, again, you know, it can be difficult for the other half, whether they're a bodybuilder or not. It's, you know, that open communication, like you say there, I think is certainly gold for PD use. I think that the partner should be involved if possible.
For me as well, like saying how far would I take it? You know what the hardest thing for me is if I do go distant and I do go quiet, I'm more relieved that I go like that rather than aggressive and angry, because I wouldn't want to be that way as a person. But you can hug your partner there and it can be just a hug, or you can really feel that hug. That's the difference sometimes at 2 weeks out. That is a little bit of a sacrifice. And I hate that. I hate not having libido. I hate not having libido at the end of prep, because I'm somebody who really cares about my partner. I don't want them to feel like they're not desirable at all.
Yeah.
I make a point of still making it happen, but I know I'm not. I otherwise would not be. You know, and that's definitely something. But again, a very understanding partner is very, very important if you want to make this work.
It's interesting you actually say it from a male point of view. I've never been able to sort of ask or guess this, but you know, a lot of male bodybuilders will say, I can't, you know, function sexually for 6 to 8 weeks out. And I've always said, you know, me and Matt will continue all the way through to pretty much a state, because that's I'm choosing to do the prep. That's not Matt's fault. And yes, you're not quite there, right? We can both align with that. But it's
your feelings for Matt outweigh your lack of sex drive.
For sure.
And you are just trying to find any way in which to be as close to that person as possible. It's connecting with that person. So even throughout prep, I never have like ED issues, none of that, none at all. I still make it happen, but I need to force it just so I know and comfort that person that I'm still there.
Yeah, because you sort of turn into like, you're like a spirit or you know, like a ghost. It's like you just tick your boxes, right? You're on autopilot. Like, it's especially when you bring things like Clen, you know, we've touched on that a little bit, but I was using Clen in your 𝗵𝗿 in the last prep, and then you're having your coffee, you're doing your fastest steps, whatever else. You know, you haven't even eaten anything, and it's maybe, you know, 10 a.m. or whatever, and it's like, I've done X amount of steps or training, I've had my coffee, I've done X, Y, Z. And you're literally, you know, Matt would say it's like watching almost a Netflix movie, because every day I'd just be doing like this. It's like a documentary. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of libido as well at the end of prep is and it can happen early on. It might not even be hormonal, it might not even be body fat at some point. It's being so laser focused that at that point you're focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's to get everything done and all your boxes ticked, get into bed, get to sleep. We obviously have the hormonal side of things, that you're going to get down regulations of libido, of hormones in general. And your body does go into survival mode, in which that's not the time and place in which your body is wanting to mate as such and reproduce. Biologically, that is what it is. But this is where, if you're a competitive athlete wanting a healthy relationship and you're going to go and do this anyway, you need to make sure you're in a relationship with someone, one, that understands, and two, that you care enough about that despite your routine and what you're putting yourself through, you've got to make that time for that person to make them feel loved and make them feel like they are able to connect with you at the end of the day.
Yeah, off the back of that, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. I always say, you know, because a lot of athletes will say, I'll make it up to you after the show. And I almost think, you know, I almost don't like the words make it up to you, because it's like you've done something wrong. It's more like, okay, so we can invest more time into doing some nice things together. I almost feel like that association would make it feel like you're blaming yourself for doing something wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong, like a holiday at the end of prep is a good thing for a couple. We've got Ibiza booked, so we're sick. Yeah. No, not quite like that, mate. We're in parties. We're in the chilled out Ibiza, Old Town. No, I'm like an old man. You should know this by now. But that will be really nice in terms of having that time together. But you should not just separate yourself during prep from your partner at all. You should see how I do it is your tick box throughout the day. Part of that tick box has to involve a healthy relationship, otherwise your prep's going to go to shit anyway. Part of that, keeping that relationship healthy and thriving, for me, is part of bringing my best package stage. And I want, when I've gone on stage, I want that person not to resent any part of it. I want them to be proud of me. It's very, very important. Very, very important for that reason. So for me, every Saturday, it's weird. It's not weird, but we have a little book, and we pick out a coffee shop, something like that, in a town or a city or something, and we will go there with the goal of, we're going to this coffee shop, we're going to rate what we have. Being on prep is black coffee, mine will have a mocha or something, and if the breakfast looks good, she'll have a breakfast as well. But it's that bit of fun, of a bit of adventure together. This is what we're going to go do, and it gives us a chance to just work. Phones are away on Saturday. We don't train on Saturday either. Saturday is always a rest day. That day is dedicated to us, to being together and just being present. That's one of the things we do. We always go to sleep together. We always wake up next to each other. This is important because in prep, oftentimes the person might go into another bed to prioritize sleep. I've heard it before. We always do that. What else do we do? There's one day a week, training wise, which we will train at the same time, where it's a body part in which we could both jump in with each other. We do all sorts of things like this. But again, to make this easier for prep to do all these things, you've got to want to do it. You shouldn't be forced to do it as such. I say tick box, but my tick box is I need this person in my life, whether I'm on prep or off prep.
I absolutely love that. And before we finish, I've actually got a listener question. I say listener, Matt's going to ask the question this week, because he obviously follows you on social media, etc. And I think you've met and stuff. So
I met him at Prophecy.
Yeah. So, and he spoke about you for ages before I got Romana on the pod. And I do a listener question at the end of each podcast, and I'm like, okay, well, you can have it this time. So what is your hobby outside of bodybuilding?
It's an interesting one, because as bodybuilders, you say, oh, I don't really have hobbies. I'm just bodybuilder, but it's trying to understand what do you enjoy in life that takes you away a little bit. So for us, like, we like to go to a coffee shop, and we get quite deep with the reviews on those coffees. I've been less interested in Marvel lately, just because I didn't like I don't like the new stages or phases at MCU.
Sure.
I like previous, it was better. I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Massive Star Wars fan. Yeah. So at the minute, I just finished Ahsoka. It was amazing. She's badass, man. She's sick. I'm catching up a Mandalorian at the minute. But if you saw my flat, it's covered with like Star Wars stuff.
Have you got Star Wars slippers?
No, I don't.
Oh my God.
Yeah, even 1 minute.
I love it.
Yeah, he makes noises and everything. But you know, I have a load of little things. I don't have like, I'm not an artist or anything like that. I'm big on, man who's growling at Chewy. Little things like my dog. He's literally, don't tell Mana this. He's my best mate. I know.
Dogs get bonus points.
What's this? No, not performing today. Come on. Oh, he's not.
What happens, we're finishing, it'd be like, whoop.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love to, you know, I've got such a strong bond with that dog. Like, he understands me, understands my mannerisms, and I understand that dog so well. When you've got that kind of bond with a dog, you want to give that dog the most awesome life.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do things especially for him. I take him to different places every time we go for walks and stuff like that. I treat him like a human, you know, like my mate. Because he
really you through prep.
Yeah, like, well, we go to the forest every rest day, which he loves. He doesn't, you know, he doesn't need a lead or anything like that. It's how, like, he's so in sync with me, and it's not through just command. He wants to stay with me. He wants to be by my side. It's like,
this is too cute.
Yeah, that's like, he's still growling at Chewy. Sorry, dude. You gonna come say hello yet? You gonna come say hello yet? You gonna come say hello? Come there. Up you come.
We need him to wave at the camera to say goodbye. Come on, doggy. Hey. Oh my God, he's big.
Boy.
He's a big boy. So, if people have listened to this episode, and of course, if you'd like to see our furry friend, then you'll need to watch on YouTube. But of course, thank you, Dan, for coming on. I feel like we could probably do another however many episodes, because we align a lot here, and the vibe is, you know, we just want to help people, right, and be authentic. So if people have enjoyed this, of course, tag us on Instagram. Dan may not reshare it because he doesn't really get on with Instagram, but we're going to let him off.
Oh, yeah. So if I don't follow you, things go into my requests, which I automatically assume is people with foot fetishes wanting to see me deadlift barefoot.
Mate.
So I don't tend to, but it's taught me a lesson, because do you know when we were trying to get that poster share? It's because I realized I didn't even fucking follow you.
Yeah, and then you have to.
How nonchalant I am in terms of, I have no fucking idea.
So if someone listens and they want to apply for coaching, have you got like a link that people can click, or how do you that?
So if you go onto my bio, click on the link tree, there's a link for application of coaching, which just sends a message to my Google Sheets, and I'm on. That's the thing as well. I think, like, being quite I'm a very involved coach. My life is revolving around that WhatsApp.
Amen.
So you know, we only have so much energy in a day in which I'm giving it to my people, going on Instagram messaging and stuff like that. It fries me. Absolutely fries me. If I need a holiday, it's not because I've worked so hard, it's because I'm socially battered.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I hear you, because when you really are passionate about this job, like, my clients are like my family. Like, I speak to them more than my family, for sure. And yeah, there's obviously mixed coaching approaches, but for myself, I needed nurturing, and I like to nurture as much as the client wants, you know.
It's more like, yeah, same kind of thing. With my clients, we do get very close, and it's important that I understand them, I understand what their life is like. I know their family, I know their partners, and we have that kind of relationship in which, like, if I don't know, I'll say like to any old client is, I'm training this day. Do you want to come down, come to mine for a coffee, spend a few hours, we'll go train, that kind of thing. I like that relationship with my clients just because the people that tend to come to me are very much like me as well. It's quite interesting how that happens.
Yeah, super cool. It's something that I'm sure we're both always going to see as a gift, and we're not just saying that, guys, because we're on a podcast. We actually mean it. But of course, if you do want to reach out to Dan, hit him up on the Instagram, go through the link, and of course he will get back to you. So thank you, Dan, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you.